Hello to my fire signs Aries, Leo and Sagittarius. Welcome to the Sagittarius new moon. You'll find the timestamps for your rising signs listed below. Hello Aries rising, welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Sagittarius, happening on the 13th of December at 10:32 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So this is a magical one. This is an evening to have a beautiful time to yourself and light some candles, highly recommended to do at a Sagittarius moon. When I think about Sagittarius, I do think about a beautiful altar of candles. I think about the sort of healing properties of fire when conjured into the form of candlelight. You're a match. You start things off, Aries. Leo is the bonfire, the brightness, the boldness, the ferociousness. Sagittarius is candles. Sagittarius is a really spiritual sign. They're a great seeker. They wish to learn. They wish to understand what is put before them in this life. They wish to make sense of it. There's a sense of like grand adventure that happens with Sagittarius too, which is really beautiful. In you as well, babe. And if we look at your birth chart, if you're an Aries rising, Sagittarius is the sign that rules your ninth house of those topics of spirituality, of philosophy, the great quest for knowledge, the importance of finding mentors in this life, and also the lovely handover when it reaches a point when you become a mentor as well. So this is the house, this is the section, the wedge of your life that we're going to be making some wishes, casting some spells, saying some prayers for. The sun and the moon are at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. In tarot, it's a tricky card. It is the 10 of Wands. So if you're a tarot reader, you kind of know what I mean. It's the culmination of a lesson, a grand cycle. It's the ending. There is also a feeling here of like self-sacrifice that I get sometimes. So we're going to keep this card in the reading and just sort of, our conversation will probably lean towards maybe some of those topics too. Are you being a little self-sacrificing at the moment, Aries rising? It's okay if you are. Are you feeling a little bit wrung out, or that there's maybe not enough petrol in your tank to keep going? When it comes to being optimistic and being a grand adventurer and cramming your head with knowledge, sometimes in certain parts of life, certain times in our lives, we can kind of feel that we've misunderstood the assignment, or that we've gotten it wrong, or that we don't know what we're doing. Or we might feel so chock full of information that we would much prefer just to sacrifice ourselves because it's too difficult. The ninth house is a really sort of sticky point too sometimes. It does speak about organized religion. It does speak about the structures around worship as well. And so for some folks, especially folks that like to read tarot and look at the stars, there might be some pain points there too. What's really lovely is that this moon, the sun and the moon at 20 degrees of Sagittarius, highlighting that tarot card, but also giving us a bit of hope and potential to move with this energy and to kind of like ask for the next grand adventure or the next teacher. Also, what's happening is that the luminaries are in trine with the dragon's head in your first house. So fire sign to fire sign, you remember, trine is support. The dragon's head's at 23 degrees of Aries. So it's not exact, but it's still there. It's still present. It's kind of like a marker point. And maybe you can use this moon too when thinking about what is your purpose here. What is your soul's rising intention? If you're an Aries rising, what can you ascertain that you're here for? And how can the other signs, or knowledge of the other signs, knowledge of the planets, how can that inform that rising potential? there might be something in you too where you're sort of like, not me, I'm not smart enough, or I don't get it. Thought that I got it, but I don't get it. I'm not good enough. These might be sort of messages that you've been giving yourself on and off, but for a while now. There's another great support here. It's between your guiding light, Mars. It's also in Sagittarius at 13 degrees, the sword and the shield, the brave one, the warrior. They're also in trine with the asteroid Chiron that's still in Aries in your first house, that will be there until 2026. They arrived full-time in 2019. So this isn't to say that since then you've been questioning who you are or what it is that you stand for, or feeling the growing reality of some unconscious wounding around your sense of self, your sense of belonging here, your sense of, the power of your contribution. It doesn't mean that it's always been prevalent, this sort of feeling of like wounding. However, when there's certain aspects that occur or certain movements with the planets and the asteroids, we do talk about it. In 2 weeks at the Cancer full moon, there will also be, on the same day, the asteroid Chiron in your first house, who's retrograde now. They will station direct on that same day as the moon. So we are in Chiron territory. We are talking about parts of us that are tender, parts of us that we kind of feel embarrassed about sometimes. Could be to do with our attention span. It could be to do with our anger. Could be to do with our sense of belonging. And that's all okay because, as I said, Mars is like supporting Chiron at this time, maybe encouraging you to have a chat about it as well. I like the 9th house. I've got a lot of planets in my 9th house, and my MC point is there too. There's a great sense of hope there and opportunity. In the ancient form of astrology, the Hellenistic astrology, the 9th house is called the house of the gods. So it feels quite sort of expansive, doesn't it? It feels quite lofty. But we also, in reality, look around and we know how dangerous the 9th house can be too. There's a lot of folks that believe that they are God. I mean, I reckon that God lives within all of us. We're all sort of part of something that's moving together. I really do believe that all roads lead to the same place. However, when it comes to religious abuse, and that's possibly where some of this wounding may have occurred along the line, it's quite common, especially if you're queer identifying, especially if you are not a part of one of the overarching populist religions of your culture. If you are alternative in your spirituality, this might be where the wounding comes from. There's a tricky point for certain individuals when they get high on their own supply so much that they think that they are, a deity, or they are the reincarnation of someone else. And that can perhaps sometimes cause them to be abusive in their way that they behave to folks that they're preaching to. And that can have us recoil from any kind of environment that feels similar. And you might even be questioning yourself. It's like, who the fuck do I think I am? What am I touting here? What am I speaking about? I've got no authority to speak about this. I don't want to be like them. So I'm going to hide. There's something sort of kind of natural about, what am I trying to say? Like compulsion to hide away, to maybe conceal some of your beliefs. You have that in common with a lot of people around the planet. A lot of folks have had to learn to pray in private. A lot of folks have been vilified for their spiritual practices. And at times in history such as these, you can't help but fucking see how damaging weaponized religion can be to the well-being of people that have chosen a different pathway. But it feels like there's something that is about to begin for you, Aries rising. And I think that it's kind of like, it feels like it's a slow moving vibe. That I see you with like a basket, sort of like collecting things and sort of like putting all your info together and, yeah, praying in private. It's a really powerful thing to do, to pray in private. We can fall out of touch with our beliefs sometimes in times of crisis, you know. People can go either way. They really hold on to their beliefs and they use them as a lighthouse, as a guiding light to guide them through. Other folks start to question what it is that they do believe in. How can this reality exist in the way that it is? How can I bear witness to such suffering and pain and believe in magic, believe in fairies, believe in the power of the mind and the universe and spirits? I have been hanging out a lot in nature, and you probably, stop me if you've heard it before, you probably have. Go out in nature, you know, it can feel, I'm being judgmental. It's really fascinating and it's really calming. And I've been watching different little pot plants and stuff that I've had for a while that needed some attention. And I've watched them, particularly the succulents. There's some here, I've got some out the back too. There were some that were living in like cement, like they had not been watered, tended to, they'd sucked all of the nutrients out of the dirt until it was like grey sand. And I was like, oh gosh, they're gone. But then I was like, no, we'll do a little repot. Sorry, everyone, I said. And instantly they just started drinking it all up, and now they're strong and bold again. It was a really beautiful metaphor for like the power of resilience. Human spirit is so resilient. We can really, really work through the darkness and lack of resource. I'm not sure if you've ever had the experience of being worried about where the next meal's been coming from. It's pretty true to my story over the years. And I get triggered sometimes when I'm in a spot where I'm not sure if there's going to be enough. I get really, really flipped out. But over time, it's been like a sort of rewiring or retraining of my brain where I sort of am kind to that part of myself that would flip out about, oh, I've done it again, I'm such a moron, like I can't believe that my resources are so low. But I can turn that ship around, and it takes practice, and it takes, you know, buying into some of the sort of like cliched metaphors about the natural world. The cliches are cliches for a reason, aren't they? You can regrow. You can water yourself. You can heal from this, Aries rising. It might take you a little bit of time alone, again. See how you feel looking at the hermit. You might be like, oh, not again, shit. I long to be out and about and co-creating and seeing people and being active. You know, there's such a call to be active at this time. I'll say it again, the power of praying in private is not to be discounted. Your rituals, your private work, the way that you worship your own gods in the 9th house at this Sagittarius new moon is just as valid as the ways in which other folks have decided to activate at this time. It's another cliche, but it's like pray for peace. I was thinking about that the other day too, and I was like, wow, for my whole life, yeah, I grew up on almost fables of anti-war protests and things like that from the 60s and 70s, and like all of the sort of populist cultural ones like John Lennon and things like that, and that was sort of like when I was little, it was stories from the past, and I was like, oh, okay, we've got world peace now. But as I grew from a little one into an adult, I was like, we've been praying for peace for our whole lives, and we probably will be praying for peace until we die. But if we stop praying for peace, I don't know what's going to happen. So we've got to keep praying. And you can pray in whichever way fits you as well, Aries rising. Don't let anybody ever tell you that you're doing it wrong, because you're not. Your integrity is pure. The candle loves you. So keep going. And maybe as we sort of work with some of this Chiron influence, as I said, that next full moon might be a little bit tenderizing too. We're going to look out and see who can provide us with some comfort or some healing where we can't provide that for ourselves as well. That's a great lesson from Chiron. You don't have to do this alone as much as you think that you do. Remember, the hermit's fine alone. They are living large. They're too busy to be lonely because they're learning. They're re-remembering what they knew from before. That's your reading, Aries rising. I hope that was valuable. Put a little horse emoji in the comments if you're still here with me. I'd love that. Also, you can send me some tip money at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. You can also subscribe to the channel there if that's something that you're financially able to do. If you'd like me to read your birth chart, please head to my website, umaruby.com, and you can book yourself in a place with me, and I'll draw you up a chart like this one and I'll read it to you. You can also book a reading for a loved one if you're in the spirit of gift-giving season, if that was something that you do and you'd like to give something that is less sort of consumable, then head to umaruby.com. You can also send me an email at urok@umaruby, and we can talk about organising a voucher. Much love to you. Take it easy, Aries rising. I love you lots. And I'll speak to you, as I said, in 2 weeks for the full moon in Cancer and the day that Chiron will station direct. So there might be some more bruises that I can help soothe for you at that time too. Much love. Hello, Leo rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the Sagittarius new moon happening on December the 13th at 10:32 a.m. if you're in the southern hemisphere with me. So that's Wednesday morning. Now, we're going to be having a look into your 5th house, which is where you express yourself, where you make love, where you make art, where you find pleasure. And we're going to take this opportunity that the moon is providing us with that dark night to make some wishes and to light some candles, as Sagittarius would really want us to do. When I think about Sagittarius, I always think about candles. I always think about the healing properties of lighting a candle. I think about all the different reasons that we light candles. We light them to celebrate. We light them to pray. We light them to hold space for folks that need it. We light them to help guide us home as well. You like the 5th house a lot, Leo rising. It's kind of an area it's your area of expertise, I might say. We could all learn a lot from you insofar as relating to our 5th house. You know what it is, or the power that can be gleaned from working from the chest, from expressing yourself, from translating the world around you to make beauty. We're really grateful for that. And a new moon here, as I said, it's a great time to maybe think about if there's a creative project that is about ready to begin. You could use this new moon cycle as the time to draft it up or to write the schedule and to begin. We've got to keep beginning, and we can begin again as many times as we want to. Things can end and we can start again. We're allowed to start again. If you need to start again, Leo Rising, you've got permission to do that. What I'm feeling is that it's probably really important to let you know that on the same day as this new moon, a couple of hours after, maybe 8 hours after, Mercury will station retrograde, which means that there's going to be a lot of information that we need to go over. There's a lot of new things that perhaps might be coming to light, and rather than reacting straight away in this culture, we know that we're being either we're compelled ourselves or we're bullied into reacting to everything, and things can be flashcards, and the resonance or the weight of the current time can feel unstable because there's always something else that grabs our attention. I'm not sure if that's the way that you feel, Leo Rising. I definitely do struggle with it sometimes. I'm finding my inability to relate to the culture of information at the moment to be a bit bombarding. The scrolling like a slot machine on social media and stuff like that is really confusing to me, and it's just so happens that I've sort of bought into that. I entered into that world with my work, trying to put my voice out there and do my bit to help. I've had to buy into these sorts of systems, and I just find it very confusing. I find it difficult to see sometimes because of all the screen time, which is alarming, unnerving. So at a new moon, in darkness, it is an invitation to unplug. Mercury retrograde is definitely an invitation to kind of sit with the facts, to think before you speak. And this new moon in your 5th house of creative expression and beauty and pleasure is kind of lighting a candle for you to see if you can find your way back to that part of your body, if you can find your way back to the pleasure zones, if you can find your way back to your romance with creativity and with artistry. I've been doing a lot of that as an active practice. It's almost like I've had to train myself to step away from the repetition of opinion back into my devotion to creativity. Been listening to lots of music that has in the past really helped soothe me in difficult times, and I've been looking at a lot of paintings, and I've been watching a lot of movies. Fantasy, sure, escapism, whatever. It's been really great to regulate my system at this time, and I highly recommend it. What I can see on the chart too is that not only is the sun and the moon at 20 degrees of Sagittarius, the moment of wish making, the luminaries are also forming a really supportive aspect with the dragon's head in Aries. So we know that for the next 18 months or so, you're going to feel compelled to learn more. You're going to really want to stretch your philosophical mind. You're really going to want to probably, if you feel ready for it, start sharing or teaching what it is that you know, that you've that you've collected, your certain level of knowledge or expertise. There might be encouragement, or there might be some great doors opening for you in that world about stepping out and sharing what you know. There's another trine, there's another supportive aspect between Aries and Sagittarius at this full moon, so this new moon too. So Leo, that's going to be whatever is happening there in your chart. It's going to be forming some sort of support too in your 1st house as well. So it does feel like a really lovely triangle that I'm looking at, which is feeding one another. The other aspect is the planet Mars at 13 degrees in Sagittarius is forming trine with the asteroid Chiron in Aries in the 9th house. So Chiron has been in Aries since 2019, and they won't leave until 2026. And there is something here or an invitation to talk about the sensitive topic of religious trauma or spiritual wounding. The ninth is great when we wish and hope to expand our mind and to learn more and to find the missing pieces, or to try and find the pattern in the mess as well. It's a great thing about the repetition of some religious practices and the hope, the bold hope that folks hang on to in times of crisis. For folks that have had a checkered past with organised religion, or for folks that whose faith has been abused or has been taken advantage of, Chiron in this place wants to talk about that, wants to sort of gently start to sort of unpick some of that wounding. It's complex, and there's multiple gods and goddesses and entities, deities that people believe in and people work with and people worship. Some folks have turned that crystalline, beautiful, real moment into a weapon, into a form of abuse to subjugate or control other folks, or to draw a harsh divide between us and them. And Chiron wants to talk about that. Mars is being brave and providing support, providing a shield at this new moon to start gently opening up some of those things. We're all different, and not everybody has experienced face-off with organised religion. However, I tend to believe that organised religion has coloured and affected the way that society operates. And we try and sort of shake off those shackles, but you can see right now the rising supremacy and the vitriol and the sort of language of damnation and things like that are slipping out of everybody's mouths across the globe. And so when it comes to faith, it can sometimes be a dirty word, or it can sometimes be something that you're ashamed of for having, or you want to zip your lip about what it is that you do believe in because you don't want to upset anybody else, or you've been actively subjugated for those beliefs. So Chiron wants to talk about this stuff. In the mythology, Chiron was the wounded healer, and so Chiron was the one that provided service and provided warmth and medicine to others, but was living with an unconscious, heavy wound that they could not heal for themselves, try as they might, as much as they wanted to fix it and get it done with. They could not, and they lived in agony. One of the mythologies is that Chiron eventually was blessed with death by the gods. They released Chiron's spirit from body and installed the constellation Sagittarius in the cosmos. Not everybody believes that, and some folks might tell you that that's incorrect, that it was actually Centaurus. I tend to think, because it helps me with my description of Sagittarius too, to think about Chiron and think about the qualities of that mythology, and how in my work, in my line of thinking, all Sagittarian placements that I've come into conversation with have a lot of similarity with Chiron. We know that Sagittarius wants to learn, wants to seek information, is brave in a way that is optimistic about jumping in the deep end, about seeking out the next bit of information. And Chiron was like that too. Chiron was wounded, and Chiron needed support from time to time. So maybe if you can feel the support from Mars, so it's sort of two houses that might be in conversation at this new moon. Definitely your fifth house, your individual self-expression. You might not make art that is in relationship to faith or spirituality. You might not have a comfortable relationship with that area. I think that there's definitely a want to understand, or there's a willingness to learn, and perhaps across the board, multiple different religious traditions or cultures interest you. If you're a Sagittarius rising, or any Sagittarius placements, really, that's sort of innate in you. It's an adventure to sort of figure out the meaning of life in some way. But those wounds present themselves. If you've been through religious abuse, they definitely present themselves quite fervently. There's been times in my life where I was taken advantage of through the guise of religious counsel, and it stopped me in my tracks. It blunted my spirituality or my faith to a point where I was a realist. And I think, being a queer identifying person too, a lot of language of subjugation does come from extremists in religion, religious philosophies that are extreme, that do disallow us or condemn us for being who we are. That can be a cross to bear too. But I think this is a new moon, this is a dark night. We're going to need to use our instincts, and we're going to have access to our candles, to our magic. And we're going to focus in on what it is that we're wanting to create or make, how we want our voice to be heard, how we see the world from our perspective, and how we can make magic with that perspective. There is this conversation, this dragon's head in the ninth for you too, Leo rising. It's sort of like it soon will meet up with Chiron. There will be a conjunction between the dragon and Chiron. There will be a moment for us to really examine this. Also at the full moon in Cancer, 2 weeks after this new moon, Chiron will station direct. So whenever anything in our galaxy stations either retrograde or direct, there is like a exclamation point on the significations of that. So maybe this is just like a prep talk too, as we move forward around this time of celebration and around this time of sort of consumable holiday period. There's a lot of perhaps potential unconscious wounding for us all to discuss around this time. As beautiful and hopeful as this time can be for some folks, it can also bring up a lot of late hidden wounds, stuff that we haven't been able to look at, or that we don't look at for a while because we've got to get on with it. I think that you can trust your ability, Leo rising. I think that you're about to step into a really pivotal, important moment in your work, in your quest, the things that you're thinking about as far as putting out into the world and publishing, sharing, perhaps thinking about, okay, so I need to learn a little bit more. I'm wanting to learn a little bit more so I can be supported by that philosophy or that knowledge. That's sort of something that's showing up in these cards too. But I can definitely feel that sort of leaning towards exhaustion. But you've got to remember how ready you are for this. This is the time for you, Leo rising. This is the time for you to put it out there. This is the time for you to stand in your kind of truth, You're not a bullshit artist. You're not pissing up the wall. What you've got to say is really valuable and coming in perfect timing for us all to enjoy and to listen to. This new moon in your 5th house is beginning a cycle in your creative work. The dragon in your 9th house will be focusing on all of those different layers of unconscious wounding, times that your faith was taken advantage of or taken for granted, and how proud you can be that you've moved through that, or you're moving through that. When it comes up to say hello in conversations such as this moon might be prompting, you are available to face it as well. There might be some teachers or some folks that aren't here anymore that you admire very deeply. And so there might be some almost like a melancholy around the faith too. I think about that sometimes because it wasn't all bad. I've been taught by a great many magical people, and some of them are here, some of them aren't. And I'm very grateful for all of them. And I believe that what they were telling me was the truth. And you are pretty in touch with your intuitive prowess, I might say, Leo rising. So your body will definitely let you know who you can trust and who is not. It's not necessary to go there. That's your reading, Leo rising. I love you very much. Do head over to buymeacoffee.com and throw some money in the tip jar if you can afford it. You can also subscribe to my channel there too, if that's something that you have the cash for. If you're still here with me, throw me a horse head in the comments. That would be really very much appreciated. And if you'd like me to read your birth chart and you haven't had that experience with me yet, I'll draw you one up, something like this, and I'll read it to you and then post it to you so you've got the hard copy to put into your records, your collection. If you'd like to buy a reading for a loved one too, send me an email at urok@umaruby.com and we can talk about getting a voucher to you to gift to a loved one. I'll be with you in 2 weeks and we're going to speak about the full moon in Cancer, which is going to be really much needed and probably quite emotional for all of us, hopefully in a really beautiful way. That is also the day that Chiron does station direct. So after the holiday period, we might have some other deep chats together in the aftermath. Much love to you, Leo rising. Take good care of yourself. Hello, Sagittarius rising. Welcome to your horoscope for the new moon in Sagittarius, happening on the 13th of December at 10:32 a.m. if you're in the Southern Hemisphere with me. So that's Wednesday morning. So we're going to take this moment just for you, Sagittarius rising. This is going to be a new moon in your first house, which means that we get to internalize our focus and we get to think about what it is we might be here for, what we are hoping to achieve with the life that we have, and how we can congratulate ourselves for our progress so far. It can be a little bit hard to do sometimes if you're not feeling tip-top. But I would highly recommend that you take as much time as you can alone to explore those inner workings, explore what's going on a level that's deeper than perhaps your what's required of you externally, or what you're being, how you're weighing up your worth in the external world. It might be really nice just to sort of chill out by yourself, light some candles. When I think of Sagittarius, I always think of an altar of candles, because your sign is mutable, which means it gives way to the next season. It relinquishes the hold of the weather and gives way to the next. When I put that layer on top of fire, I always think of candles. I think about a beautiful magical altar. I think about a quiet space for prayer and for contemplation. I think about the different times that we do light candles and for who and how that helps to soothe our soul. So definitely light some candles at this new moon, Sagittarius. The other thing that we need to discuss, and I probably will talk about in tandem with this new moon, is the fact that Mercury will have stationed retrograde on the same day. So the moon happens in the morning, and by evening, Mercury, the planet that brings with it information and teaches us how to communicate, will have stationed its retrograde position, which simply means that from our perspective, it looks as though it's going backwards. So it's going to take its time from Capricorn, where it is now, and sort of hit reverse and head back into Sagittarius. So when working with Mercury, it's not always easy for a Sagittarian soul, Mercury is not at home in Sagittarius. It's in the opposite house to which that it feels really confident and capable, which is Gemini in your 7th house. So when a planet is in a space where it's not able to work in its sort of most helpful way, when it doesn't have a really good attitude, when it's being sort of met with conflict, strange things can happen, particularly with Mercury, because there's not always a sort of benevolent force that comes with Mercury. It can sometimes be pretty rude and can bring with it information that we'd either much rather not hear, or it lies to us. So there's that to kind of think about too. At this new moon, the sun and the moon are both at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. So this is a card for you that would probably resonate no matter what kind of a Sagittarius you are. But we're looking at the 10 of Wands at this position. It's the third wedge, the third decan of Sagittarius. And this cumulative sort of feeling brings with it great exhaustion. And almost self-sacrifice too is something that I always see when I look at the 10 of Wands. There is a self-sacrificial kind of moment here. What are all those twigs and sticks and wands being collected for? It can be really, really exhausting to keep grinding your gears and to keep trying to make something happen and make something happen out of nothing. And sometimes there's a kind of like a seduction coming from somewhere to just, with fire, strike a match and burn it all, get rid of everything and start again, or not even start again, just have a tantrum. I'm bringing this sort of feeling up as well, Sagittarius rising, because there is a conversation that's happening over in Aries too at this new moon. It's not exact configurations, but kind of close enough, and they will be exact in time. And in fact, by the time we get to the next full moon in Cancer, there's going to be a pivot happening here as well. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the asteroid Chiron and how much you have in common with that mythology, with that asteroid. And I'd also love to talk to you about pride and about self-determination. The reason why, I'll tell you the astrology first. So at this new moon, when it becomes exact, Mars will be in Sagittarius, so your first house. So you might feel that sort of like, you can probably feel it around you or coming from you, this like rising, your ire is rising, maybe tempers are rising. There's this sort of robustness that can happen with Mars. In the first house, I'd like to think that it's something to do with self-belief and with having the courage to stand by your convictions. What's happening is that Mars is in trine, so fire sign to fire sign is always a supportive relationship whenever the planets are sort of at similar degrees of each sign. So at 13 degrees of Sagittarius is supporting the asteroid Chiron in Aries. Now Chiron, I've probably told you a lot about Chiron over the years, especially if you're a Sagittarius or if you have any Sagittarius placements. Now, I could be incorrect. In fact, I'm sure that there'll be lots of folks that might want to rebut this statement, but there are some philosophies or some stories that tell the genesis of the constellation Sagittarius. Long story short, Chiron, the centaur, the healer, the one that had eternal life and put that time to good use and learned all manner of different ways of communication with the natural resources of the earth. They learned herbalism, they learned to counsel, they learned to sit and to have folks tell them their troubles. They also learned a whole bunch of really practical skills too, like archery, and they were a philosopher as well. So there was a great a life well spent, you might say. They put their time to good use. But in an archery lesson with Hercules. Hercules misfired and shot Chiron with a poison arrow, but because of Chiron's relationship to the gods, they couldn't leave their physical body, they couldn't die. But that didn't stop the agony that this arrow inflicted. So you've probably heard that phrase before, Sagittarius rising, the wounded healer. That's a really lovely byline whenever we discuss Chiron and talk about the significations of this asteroid. In reality, it was discovered in 1977. It's not one of the main asteroids in the asteroid belt. It actually has quite a unusual orbit that's sort of further off. However, in astrology, there's certain points in time where it's really worth talking about Chiron and really checking in with oneself around one's wounds. And the commonality or similarity between anyone who goes into some sort of practice in order to be of service and to help other folks, there's a wound there. And sometimes those wounds can't be healed or fixed alone. It's at times that Chiron shows up to talk about that we kind of are invited to cast our net a little wider and to ask for help if we need it. So in astrology land, the asteroid Chiron has been in Aries since 2019 full time. It was in 2018 for a couple of months, but then from 2019 it's making its slow journey through Aries. And so it won't leave until 2026, I think. And this isn't to say that there's going to be an ongoing sort of battle with Chiron. However, it might be worth checking your chart, your birth chart, and seeing what happens for you in Aries as well as in Sagittarius. Because on your birth chart, I can tell you, Aries rules your 5th house of your creative self-expression, your artistry, and also your ability to have a good time and to experience a bit of pleasure and fun. We talk about the inner child a lot in the 5th house. We also talk about our, I was going to say birthright, but it's not for everyone. The healing properties of just making shit up and having fun and like going on dates and having a nice sweet time. That's all 5th house stuff. So maybe not, but there might be something in that in those themes that have had a sort of kind of almost feeling like a tenderization, or like you're pressing on a bruise. There may have been things, you might be an artist, you might be a creative person, but there might have been this sort of like blockage or this imposter syndrome that has sort of, it's having its wave rather than its ebb, It's kind of maybe rising or has risen over the past 5 years or so. At this time, as I said, Mars is supporting Chiron. So hopefully we can use this feeling at the new moon for you to, if there is wounding that you need to look at, to look at it. Also feel the support from Mars. There's a shield there. There's a protecting sort of quality there. And maybe even if you just sort of write it down, like if you sort of write to the part of you that's scared, or the part of you that's annoyed, the part of you that's frustrated that the creativity isn't flowing the way that you might like it to. The other support from Sagittarius to Aries that I can see is in fact the sun and the moon as well. So this moment of, we're starting a new cycle here in Sagittarius with a new moon, a new lunar cycle. So with this lovely support, there's also a conversation that's happening with the dragon in Aries, in your 5th house of self-expression. So we know that for the next 20 months or so, 18 to 20 months, there is going to be this emphasis on your creative self, on your pleasure-seeking self, the availability of pleasure in your life, the way that you relate to yourself or relate to different versions of yourself when you were younger, and how you can be a support to those other versions. So yeah, it seems like there's a focus here on some kind of wounding creatively, sort of in relationships or otherwise. Let's get you some tarot as well, Sagittarius rising, because yeah, look, because with the Ten of Wands, it does feel like exhausting. It feels like, I don't know, like I've got that song again. It always happens. Is that all there is? I know that PJ Harvey does a great cover of it on the Basquiat soundtrack, and I can't remember. It's escaped me who the original is. That's very rude. You'll probably tell me. Please tell me in the comments if you remember who that song is originally by. But yeah, is that all there is? You know, that's understandable if that's how you're feeling at the moment, babe. That's okay. Tarot's got another story to tell you. But yeah, you're not the only one that feels maybe overwhelmed right now. And you're not the only one that feels kind of small. Perhaps this sort of wounding in the fifth house of the way that you express yourself, the way that you're putting pen to paper or putting, voice to wax, whatever it is that you do creatively, or, just the way that you're trying to express yourself, that there's a reluctance there sometimes. And depending on what company you're in or what kind of environment you're in, the reluctance to speak your mind or to try and help. I mean, I think that's the overarching thing here, is that will always be something that is your motivation, Sagittarius rising. You're a great seeker of knowledge, and that's to disperse that knowledge and to share it with other people and to help them. That's why I like Chiron and Sagittarius. To finish that mythology, back to it, sorry, I'm a bit scatty today, the mythology of Chiron's, the crescendo of that story, so the pain, the wounding, Chiron pleaded to the gods to set them free. They eventually acquiesced and released his spirit from his body, and they installed the constellation Sagittarius in our cosmos in memorial of Chiron. That was where I was going with that before. Thanks for sticking with me. But as I said, not every astrologer believes that, and there's differing perspectives in the mythology, and there's also a lot of folks that might say, that's an error, that's wrong. That's okay, they can say that if they like. I like to think of Chiron and Sagittarius being, familiars. They're both centaurs, they're both half beast, half human, with horse legs and a quest for knowledge, a thirst for knowledge. So I like to think of those two as related, and I like that story. Remind me to tell you what my source is for that story. I'll have to find the specific retelling of the myth, of that installation of the constellation. I really like it. It's really beautiful, and maybe something nice for you to meditate on. So in tarot, we've got some lovely little messages here. We've got the Hanged One. So there's that feeling of being like bound, maybe gagged, just like I always have this feeling of like danger with the Hanged One. It's sort of like, oh gosh, this poor individual, like what's happened here? How did they get to that point? Is anyone going to help them? Are they okay? And the Hanged One sort of looks down to us and is like, yeah, I'm fine. I've like released control of this situation completely, and I'm really calm and I'm really present. Actually, I'm not in pain, I'm not in danger. I'm present here in this moment. As difficult as it looks, I'm actually okay. And you've got the Ace of Cups and the Two of Cups. So this is a rekindling, Sagittarius rising. This could be someone in your environment. This could be, those two cards together. It's always kind of juicy if you wanted a love reading. It's sort of like, wow, I wonder who they are. Where's that offer coming from? But because this is a new moon in your first, I reckon that it's a message of love from you to you. You're all right, Sagittarius rising. In fact, you're better than all right. You're really lovely. And you deserve to hold yourself in regard It doesn't have to be lofty, it doesn't have to be mighty, but you deserve to keep your feelings in mind in this life. Your tenderness and your vulnerability and your kindness, your care, it's all really valid stuff. And that bravery that you have and that sort of like urgency to learn more and to absorb it and to get it in and to put it out there and to be around some of the great thinkers in this life, that's all awesome too. You've got some pretty good stuff to say at this juncture. And maybe this energy of Chiron in the 5th house, for some, it's been there since 2019 full time. So, we can kind of think to ourselves pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. It's not post-pandemic though, it's still a pandemic. That's probably one thing to remember as well. So maybe limitations around your access to the outside world, that could be something that there's a bit of a lament there as well. I'm not sure. If it's not, it's probably good for us all to remember that the pandemic is still ongoing and that there are a lot of people on planet Earth whose lives have been forever changed by this. And with empathy and kindness, we can recognize how the sacrifices that they've had to make in their life to keep themselves well or to keep people that they love well deserves its moment of grief as well, I might say. I'm not sure if that's valuable for you, Sagittarius. It might not be. You may be, vaxxed up and moving through and feeling strong and bright. But if not, or if you are, remember that too. Some folks' lives change forever, and to meet them in this new incarnation invites them to meet you in your new incarnation too. That's the reading, I think, Sagittarius rising. I think I got everything covered. I've written lots of scribbly notes here, but I think that's okay. If you're still here with me, put me a little horse head in the comments. That would be great. Bit Godfather. But yeah, I think a horse head might be nice. In honor of you and your cousins, I'm just thinking of, there's a great, I'm sure you've seen it, a great cartoon of a group of centaurs sort of shunning and turning their back on another creature, which is their cousin, who is a horse head and a human torso with a hairy bum and hairy legs. It's really funny. If you needed a laugh, check it out. You can send me some tip money at buymeacoffee.com/UmaRuby. You can also subscribe there monthly. If that's something that you've got the money to do, that would be really grateful for that. If I've not read your birth chart before, they look like this. And you can head to umaruby.com and book yourself a session with me. You can also purchase a voucher for a loved one if you wanted to gift a reading from me to somebody you care about. If that's the case, email me at urok@umaruby.com. They're the letters UROK. Much love to you, Sagittarius rising. Take good care of yourself. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks to discuss that full moon in Cancer. And that's also the day that Chiron, the asteroid, will station direct too. So whenever the planets or asteroids move backwards or move forwards, we talk about them. So there's some preparation here. Maybe at that full moon there might be an extra texture to this unconscious wounding that you might be grappling with. Until then, I love you. Take care.